Hi again, everyone. Today we have another sabbatical officer interview in preparation of YUSU's upcoming elections. We're joined today by Jonathan Stephen, who started out at Huddersfield University Student Union as education officer and became president for his second year in office. Jonathan has since gone on to become the diversity and inclusion officer at Kirklees Neighbourhood Housing, and we're extremely interested to hear about his roles and experience in the hopes of inspiring some of you applicants. So, Jonathan, it's great to have you today. I'll start
Thank
off
you
with
for
our
having me.
usual nice little broad question I've got for you first. Could you please tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Of course, yes. So obviously my name's Jonathan Stephen. I currently work for Kirklees Neighbourhood Housing, which is an arm's length management organisation of Kirklees Council, and essentially the social housing provider. And my capacity there is equality, diversity, inclusion. So I work quite a broad range, supporting kind of the strategy, operational activity of campaigns, and then developing resources for staff and for tenants. So that's a little bit of my professional capacity. Socially, I love writing. Like everyone during this situation, blogging has become more of a thing that I thought, yeah, actually I want to do more of that. So it's been nice to tap into some stuff. And I'm also a trustee for a charity in Halifax, Healthy Minds. So that's given me something to really throw myself into and keep busy. So yeah, little snippet.
Wonderful. So obviously your first role within the Students' Union was education officer. So first of all, what inspired you to apply for that role?
Oh, that's such a good question. I did a psychology degree, and in my final year, I thought, you know, this felt like my time. I'd been part of the Students' Union supporting kind of volunteer projects. I was part of societies, sports clubs, and I just loved it. And during my time at uni, I did a lot of kind of, I suppose a lot of students do, exploring my identity. I was really finding comfort in a place that I hadn't found before. So a lot of those different things happened throughout those years, and I thought actually I would like to give that back, whilst also trying to make change what you want to see more of. And it just so happened I kind of pulled out last minute because I was nervous, and it was that initial bit of God, can I put myself on? Do I want this face on posters? I don't think so at this time. But you learn actually it's not about your face on pictures, it's the messages. So in between that year, I started a PhD at the time, and that just didn't feel right. And during my PhD, the election position was coming up, and it felt the perfect time. And it was just kind of that extra year being at university. I think doing that research kind of aspect, and then some of the research was all on inclusion. It gave me time and space actually to go, yeah, you know, I want to run, I want to give it a best shot, I want to give back. And I was a bit more confident in myself that it didn't matter about my face on pictures and all over social media. It was what I was saying to people.
That's a very good job you did. So obviously after that, you then continued your time in the SU and applied to be president in the end. So what sort of inspired you to continue that time as part of the Students' Union?
I wasn't finished. 1 year was not enough. I had just started to get a taste for understanding more of the structures of the university and the Students' Union, understanding the power of campaigns and how to do those effectively, working with staff, not just in the Students' Union, but the university. All of that broader learning that you only get in that first year, you start to tap into and understand. It was gearing me up for actually now I can make quite a considerable amount of change. And you get used to going to committees, 4 or 5, 6 committees in a day, in between going to an academic rep conference or a different student-led activity. And it just pushes you, and you just get that. I just thrived off it. I really did. It was just brilliant. And like I say, it came to the end, and I can remember having to sit down with my mentor at the time. He said, you're going to run. And I thought, I'm not sure. And then I came away and I thought, why would I not? I've got nothing to lose. I've had a great year, but I'm definitely not finished yet. There's so much more. So really, it was that motivation. It was everything I started to see into fruition. The buzz of working with students and seeing new ideas come through. learning from students, learning from staff, all of that just came together, and I thought, yeah, I'm not finished yet. Let's go for round two.
Oh, that's great. So did you kind of, I suppose, well, you had two roles in there. So what did you notice were the main sort of differences within those roles?
Yes, so in my first year, I was education officer, and my remit and part of my manifesto that I ran with was diversity in the curriculum. So as education officer, I typically was on quite a lot of committees, which really helped me, I think, well, tooled me anyway for the president role, because I got used to the influence and negotiation at these committees, knowing that a presentation and me saying this needs to happen isn't just going to make it happen. I needed to be stronger in my abilities to influence others and demonstrate and feed up the student feedback. So the real difference for me between the two positions, education, I felt was very busy in committees. I didn't always get as much time and space to participate with the activities officer, support the rest of the team with different social activities, because a lot of my role was in the committees, and working with academic reps. And that fed into the kind of the advice centre then. It was weekly meetings with academic reps, learning from them, what's happening on their courses, and then pulling that together and going, what's going on? How can we make this better, from that quality assurance angle, as well as that co-creation with students. So that was education. And then going into president, there was so much scope. I had the knowledge and understanding of the governance of universities, which had huge tool to my thinking at the time. And then being able to tap in and support the rest of the team on the activities officer and the qualities officer, and still tap into it, but then take a lead on some of those aspects where I thought, yeah, a big part of my stuff was equality, diversity, inclusion. So it just enabled me from education to president to widen up what I was looking at through those areas, and not maybe keeping it so tight to the curriculum, but looking more about the social spaces and things.
So obviously you talk about a lot about diversity, inclusion, which is super, super important. And your work now also involves that as a top, like the subject matter. And also you do your work with ITV, diversity panel member. Is that something that's really important to you? And is that something that you kind of explored through your time in the SU?
Absolutely. It was something I find, this may be strange actually for other people to hear, but within equality, diversity, inclusion, I find comfort. And I find comfort because I meet people who are going through whatever struggles, however they identify with, or whatever achievements they've secured and whatever learning they've got, which is different to mine, just strengthens what the approach we can take. And that's really at the heart of it. I thrive off it. I'm really pleased over this last year, although it was in really horrific circumstances, that we've seen investment more in equality, diversity, inclusion. I think I know other officers experienced this, and I think on Gem, she touched on it, is that kind of that negotiation constantly whilst you're an officer to push equality, diversity, inclusion as something which isn't a subsection of the agenda, but should underpin everything we do. And just welcome the fact that it's ever changing, and not, we can't put time limits on equality, diversity, inclusion, because it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Only now are people more and more unlocking more about themselves, which obviously will change, key structures, and how we operate, and so they should. So yeah, absolutely. I find comfort in that space. I learn a lot, and equally there's the challenge of not necessarily winning over, but bringing others on the journey with you who may not be as comfortable.
Yeah. And then obviously within your time at the SU, you received the Thank You Award for Equality and Diversity for your work with the BAME Ambassador Scheme. Could you tell us a little bit about that and how it felt?
That was a complete surprise. And I think just really, that was for everybody else anyway, because we'd put so much work into it. The BAME Ambassador Scheme, we started that as I started my position as education officer. And we knew we wanted to do something. We put it together very, very quickly, working with students in its essence at that time, co-creating that, getting it through the structures, getting it passed, working with students. And the privilege, And the learning journey I had gone on working with the BAME ambassadors over that, year into 2 years was just brilliant. We did they did phenomenal campaigns, and just being able to sit back and kind of go, wow, look at what these students are achieving for interrogating policies, looking at how the course content is developed and what's stale and how can we rejuvenate it. And moving then to the thank you at the end of the year, yes, it was great, but it certainly was for all that network of students and staff. The SU staff were brilliant. Because the amount of times we'd be pushing each other, I'd say, right, let's close the office and get to a talk, just to really put Black and Asian, Black and brown people's voices at the heart of what we do and really unlock it. So yeah, it was just a privilege to be part of, and I think that award was just a cherry on the top for everybody.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely something to be proud of. Are there any other achievements within your roles which I suppose buttered your crumpet with your proudest achievements within your roles?
Do you know what? There's a lot of different things which I was really fortunate to do. I think something that really stands out for me is, and again, I think something I undermined about these officer positions early on is just how big they are and the change you can make. And with that said, I did a lot of work. I was also a TEF panelist for 2 years during education officer and president. And as part of that panel, we were interrogating kind of how the teaching excellence framework was developing. We were interrogating how it was developing, and where does the student voice sit in that, and how is it weighted. I did quite a big campaign with a number of other officers across the country, signing a letter that we wrote to Nicola Dandridge, the Chief Exec of the Office for Students, to say, I've been part of this process and I have serious concerns over the students' involvement, but importantly, the participation. And because of that, I got, wrote a wonky article and then met Nicola, and we talked openly about, what are the issues with this process. And again, in terms of not necessarily achievement, but it just enabled me to get a bit more learning, some more tools. So when I came back to the university and I was in these committees, it gave me a bit of, I'm ready as well. I know the TEF process. So it's that influence thing again.
Yeah.
And that was a huge thing that I didn't necessarily expect I would be doing over that year as president, but it took its course. And to this day, out of that, then I've done a keynote session for a big international conference in September, not last year, now the year before. And it was great because I got to talk about all of my experiences with equality, diversity, inclusion, speaking about the importance of, trusting students when they tell you that there's something what needs evolved. So it was great. And I'd say that was something because of that, led on to a lot of different things, even to where I am in my current position.
Yeah, so obviously your work as president was hugely important. And what I'm quite interested in, especially because we've had a few of these interviews, is what sort of happens in your daily life as president of the SU? You wake up in the morning, what's your day like?
That is a great question. All I can say is, wow, it's fast paced. You don't realize how quick that year goes from everything to, as being president, you are tapping into everything, all what the other officers are doing, keeping a hold on what one officer's campaign is to the equalities officer, to the community, all of that you're keeping kind of a hold on whilst leading the students' union, and as a council member of the university, you play like this pivotal bridge role, and you have so many different hats. As education officer, I felt that, but certainly as president, it was just magnified how many hats I was wearing between but the hardest thing for me at that time, I think, is because you're in so many meetings and you're talking about a huge amount of things around the resourcing of the university, the fees, finances, services, you can sometimes feel like you're becoming distant from the student body. And it's really important then that you connect to your officer team to go out to those events still and see what students are doing, because you're doing so much of the finance of the Students' Union, the university, and how is it strategically operating, as well as what is the operational delivery like. So there's loads of learning, but it is completely fast-paced, in and out of meetings, trying to go to student events. So yeah, loads.
So obviously having your role as education officer the year before, do you feel like that prepared you for the role of the president, I suppose, for the big top dog role?
Yeah, I would 100% say that. Education, it just kind of you're in so many committees as education officer. Well, I was at the time anyway, and work with so many different student groups, as well as forming these kind of student networks. So that's things like the BAME Ambassador Scheme. And out of that, other student networks were born. So because of all of that, creating projects in collaboration with staff, Students' Union or university, and the committees, it really set a discipline and tone, and I got those insight into how we work and what we do. And each university and Students' Union will be different. Leadership plays a huge role in how institutions are defined and how they work and their practices, but you get a huge amount of oversight into that. And that really just tells you that's exactly what I'm going to do this year.
Yeah. And then obviously since then, you've gone on to have this career at Kirklees Neighbourhood Housing. Could you tell us maybe a little bit about that and how you found your way into the role?
Absolutely. So that was actually a surprise to myself, really. I started a master's after finishing as president of the Students' Union at Manchester in international development. And this job position came up, and I thought, more than anything, and again, this is something I learned from being an officer, just go for it. And I thought, I'll just keep my foot in with kind of full-time positions and going through the interview process. And went through that process, was fortunate enough to be offered the role, which I really didn't expect. Really, I mean, I said girl power twice in the interview, which I truly believe in, but it just came out naturally. And as part of that, I thought, no, there's no way. I don't necessarily have all the experience, because I think you really, as an officer as well, you gain so much experience that don't downplay it. Because it's huge amounts of experience we're getting that not everyone has access to. And I think I did downplay that. Anyway, I was offered the job and suspended my studies for a year. I'm picking them up shortly. And ever since then, it's just been great. It's a much more larger, complex organization than working in the Students' Union. But similar challenges in terms of EDI, and I love just being able to collaborate with new people. And I think this year's, I was only in my role 4 weeks before I started to work remotely. So it was again about connecting with people in a whole new way, really, and building meaningful relationships, but really trying to get, everything what I did as education officer and president, I quite quickly tried to break down to help me understand, what can I do with that at this point to support me and the organization and others in this position. So yeah, it's been great. And a lot of the other stuff from the EDI, even with Healthy Minds, and like you mentioned, the ITV diversity panel, I can really help, that learning helps navigate my current position. And I'm learning loads more about different organizations, learning loads from others, and, OD and learning and development, and, how do we really get equality, diversity, inclusion underpinning everything.
Yeah, and obviously you mentioned that you've got an interest in blogging, and of course your role ending up online as such. Has that kind of sparked your interest in remote working as such? And how did the role differ online compared to in person?
I love remote working. And I'm not sure, I've not looked exactly into how the younger, well, not necessarily younger, but millennials enjoy the kind of remote working. But for me, it frees up so much of that work-life balance. So yeah, I do really, really enjoy it. I do understand the pros and cons of what's, mentioned about it. But I do feel for myself that there's I can welcome it slightly differently. You know, I love blogging, and I've not done that for a couple of years. And I think, like everyone, we've had extra time, and I've started to pick that back up again and really think about what message do I want to say now, not just writing things when I was at uni, like, yeah, let's get that out. But what do I really want to say, and how do I want to say it? And I think that's where, in terms of my role and that virtual delivery, I've met it with a bit more comfort, maybe, but also willingness just to try, you know, and let's give it a go. I deliver kind of our mandatory training all online at the moment, as well as campaigns. A lot of the sessions I run, they will be online. And it's just trying new things. But yeah, I agree. I think just because I've maybe done some of the blogging in the past, and definitely as an officer, again, you know, you've been that many different marketing materials and getting used to cameras, that it's just second nature. And again, that's another big part of that role that just really benefits you, because you just get used to it. Yeah, you might still feel nervous and, you know, want to check your hair and what am I wearing, but that's natural, I think, you know, but you definitely just get more comfortable with it, I would say.
Have any of the skills within your role in the SU, have you been able to apply those to your current career with Kirklees?
Absolutely. The kind of, you know, the amount of projects we worked on as education officer and president, and the skills of understanding the start of a project through to the end, then thinking about being able to review it. You know, that was a huge part of my current role. As well as the kind of strategic foresight, you know, as president, and the year I was there, we were shaping a whole new strategy for Huddersfield Students' Union. That at the time, when I was doing that, I was like, what does this really mean? You know, what does this entail? And now you see why they are important. That you're part of that process, and you understand how that is shaped from start to finish, and how it determines the you know, the kind of work that we're all doing and where we're heading. And a lot of that I've had to do in this current role over this last year. So it's great that I've got that to come back on. And I do that an awful lot, actually. I will sometimes sit back and just go, you know, what did I do at the Students' Union? How did I break that down? Preparing for committees, taking minutes. I have an inclusion champion network at Kirklees Neighbourhood Housing, so similar to the networks at the SU. Again, I'd write agendas for those. So just, you know, the admin side to the project side, running campaigns, marketing and communications. You know exactly who you think about your target audience. You're thinking about how do we review the quality of that engagement? What's the transmission like? A lot of that and that terminology wasn't necessarily at the forefront of my mind being an officer. But then it's defined in different organizations. You're like, oh yeah, that's it. That's what I was doing. So yeah, absolutely. So many different skills cross over.
So you're a bit of a students' union expert at this point. So what sort of advice do you have to give people who are considering nominating themselves? Because obviously you've got experience in two roles in particular. What particular advice would you give people who are thinking of applying?
Do you know what I'd say? I mean, like I mentioned, really, I completely understand how terrifying it can be. But we've all got something to say. And not only say, but we carry a message and we carry a different life experience, whatever that may be. And I think when you can hone in on that and not be thinking about the worrying stuff around the campaign and your face going out on different things and why would people vote for you, if you're authentic and you have a message and you've got a story to tell, then go for it, because they're the kind of life opportunities that don't come by every day. You know, don't allow that anxiety of, well, what will I say? You know, that will all happen. You've got your story. No one can take your story away from you, basically. And I think if you can be as authentic as that, and there's an inclination that you're interested in running, just go for it, because your story and message will carry you. The rest will just become in the background noise.
Yeah.
But yeah, be true to yourself and go for it.
Inspiring. Thank you very much. So it's been lovely, lovely, lovely to hear from you today, Jonathan. And thank you very much for sharing your experiences all about the SU and much, much more. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.